First Lady, thank you so much, always for your labor of love and for being bold and brave enough to say what God says. You know, listening to what you're sharing today, this is something that's not going to find favor with a lot of people, because, you know, the books have been written and articles have been written about commanding your morning. And, you know, I've seen people tell congregations to tell your angels to go before you and create a harvest and do sort of thing. And so it's not going to be very popular, but you have got to say what God says. And I want to encourage you and commend you for that. Amen. So let us continue where we left off last evening. We were talking about the effects of rape. The effects of rape. And I shared with you some of the effects that those who have made a study of this crime. And they say, you know, you have gynecological disorders, reproductive disorders, infertility, sexual dysfunction, STIs, that's sexually transmitted infections, and sexually transmitted diseases like HIV and AIDS, death, increased risk of suicide, depression, unsafe abortion because of unwanted pregnancy. And we talked about that. And then we started looking at, we're going to look at two stories, and we started looking at the first one found in 2 Samuel. First Lady, just be prepared to read, please. 2 Samuel chapter 13 from verse 15, which talked about Amnon, the son of David, and his brother Absalom had a sister, her name is Tamar. And the scripture said that he loved her. And I put that love in quotation mark. He loved her. He really desired her. He desired her. Maybe she was beautiful, and he desired her. And we're not going to go over this story, but he slept with her. He raped her. He raped her. And we started to talk about what would happen if somebody raped you as a female, or even you as a male, or someone that you love, your spouse, your children, your good friend, your sibling. How would you feel? And we were real last evening as we were talking about what we would do. And most people talk about wanting to kill the person. You want to get back at them. You want to exact vengeance on them because they hurt you and they hurt somebody you love. And we talked about that. And I was telling you last evening that we're in this thing together because I have never experienced it and I don't want to, but I could just imagine what would happen if something like that would happen to somebody that I love. I know how I would feel. And it's a challenging thing to be able to say, well, you know, I would forgive them. Because that's the question I ask. Can you forgive someone who would have done something like that? And it's a challenging thing for all of us. But I also said to you that it is possible. It is not only possible, but it is what God would want us to do. Because we have to put God, or take God at his word. He said, vengeance is mine. Vengeance doesn't belong to us. And if we take vengeance, we are actually stealing. We are taking from God what belongs to him. If God says something is mine and we take it, then we are stealing from God. I know the Bible asks, would a man rob God? So, you know, it is a very, very challenging thing for us. You know, it's easy to forgive somebody. They steal something from you, or they insult you, or, you know, even slap you. It's a whole lot easier to forgive them for that. But for that kind of act, it's not easy. And so we want to continue where we left off last evening. And I just want to ask the question, has anybody thought about what we talked about last evening? Has anybody given it much thought? And do you have a different mind from where we were last evening? Do you think now that having thought about it, that, yeah, I could do that? It might be easy, but I could come to that place. I believe or maybe I would desire to come to that place where I can say, I forgive you. Has anybody given it any thought at all? Quickly before we move on. Anyone? Male or female?
No comments, Dr. Rich.
No comments. Okay. All right. Maybe you need to warm up a little bit. I understand. So what we will do, we'll continue reading that story, First Lady. Just started from the beginning, from verse 13. This is just after Amnon raped his sister. Just after. This is his response. We're talking about the effects of rape. So go ahead.
Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said to her, "Arise, be gone." So she said to him, "No, indeed, this evil of sending me away is worse than the other that you did to me." But he would not listen to her. Then he called his servant who attended him and said, "Here, put this woman out away from me and bolt the door behind her." Now, she had on a robe of many colors, for the king's virgin daughters wore such apparel. And his servant put her out and bolted the door behind her.
All right, stop a minute. So she said, here's what she said. She said, what you're doing to me now is worse than what you did to me. Why do you think she said that? She said, this evil of sending me away is worse than the one that you did to me. And of course, what she was referring to was the fact that you raped her. Why would she say something like that? Anybody?
Because sex was much before I forget what I was going to say. Sorry.
I didn't hear you clearly, Jonathan. Johnny?
Yeah, Dr. So because sex was before marriage in the Jewish culture.
Sex was
a
before
shame in the Jewish culture.
Okay, I think I know what you're trying to say. All right. Okay, so basically, remember the Jewish culture was one of honor and shame.
There's a comment in the chat.
Yeah, go ahead.
It said, was said, now she has to live with the shame of being raped, and she will be shamed.
Right. And the thing is that we think of shame as just, okay, embarrassment. But in that culture, shame was worse, almost worse than death. And a woman who was found to be pregnant or would have had sex before marriage would have been shamed. And she, being the king's daughter, would have been put to shame. And he raped her, and that was between her and him. But the shame she would have carried with him putting her out was a shame in front of the entire population. Because they didn't make joke with that, you know. They didn't make joke with that at all. When you got married, you would have had to produce the evidence that you were a virgin, and she would not have been able to do that. And then nobody would believe that it's her brother that raped her. So what was actually going to happen in her mind, it was something that she could not live with. So she said to him, listen, what you are doing to me now, you have taken away my virginity, you have put me to shame in front of the whole population, everybody. And that would have been worse than the actual act itself. So this is what she was talking about. So let's continue.
Dr. Richards, we have a comment, and Sister Judy hand is up. It says that because she felt ashamed, then someone said she would no longer be able to wear her coat of many colors, which would speak for itself. And then someone said because he discarded her and she felt shame. Sister Judy. Then another comment, the act
Hello,
of
yes.
rape was-
Hi, hello. Hi, hello. You call me,
Go
yes,
ahead.
Pastor Judy. Yeah, yeah. What I was saying is that because when she yes, I said what said about being ashamed, but she would not be able to marry anybody again at all, you know. So she just be like put away the father's house there. She wouldn't, I think that's one thing. She wouldn't be able to marry.
Well,
She would be
and
dishonored,
you're correct.
and she would not be able to marry nobody, marry her again.
Yeah, and that's the thing.
Is that all
because
right?
yes, yes, and you are correct. So because she would have had to
Thank you.
prove that she was a virgin in order to get married, and on the night of the consummation of the wedding, they would have found out that she was no longer a virgin, and that too would have been the shame. That would have been the shame. So in other words, she would not have been able to get married at all. Yes, you would say in a comment, First Lady.
Yeah, there was a comment that came in. The act of rape was temporary, but it's effective, permanent.
Yeah, and that happens even today. That happens today. And not all cases it's permanent, the effects, but it's long lasting. And if you don't deal with it, it can become permanent. All right, so let's continue.
Last comment, good night, man of God. Sometimes there are things that we may do to one another, like maybe, for example, if a person says something bad behind our backs, we may be quick to forgive. But where rape is involved, there are so much that can be taken away from that person. It's not easy to walk with your head high after being raped.
Correct. And you start to blame yourself. You wonder if it's my fault. Did I cause it? And all these things go through your head. And the fact that you were helpless, that is one of the things that really, you couldn't do anything at all about it. And that is one of the things, even for us as men, and we said that last night, in thinking about it, that person that you love being helpless and somebody taking advantage of that, it messes your mind up. It really messes with your whole psyche, your whole spirit. So rape is a terrible crime. So let's continue.
Then Tamar put ashes on her head and tore her robe of many colors that was on her, and laid her hand, on her head, and went away crying bitterly. And Absalom, her brother, said to her, "Has Amnon, your brother, been with you? But now hold your peace, my sister. He is your brother. Do not take this thing to heart." So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when King David heard of all these things, he was angry. And Absalom spoke to his brother Amnon, neither good nor bad. For Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar.
So you see, coming out of it, again, anger and hatred. And not even by the ones who were affected directly, but those who were indirectly affected, her father and her brother. Anger from her father and hatred from her brother. So let's continue.
And it came to pass, after 2 full years, that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal Hazor, which is near Ephraim. So Absalom invited all the king's sons. Then Absalom came to the king and said, "Kindly note your servant has sheep shearers. Please let the king and his servants go with your servant. But the king said to Absalom, no, my son, no. Let us not all go now, lest we be a burden to you. Then he urged him, and he would not go. And he urged him, but he would not go, and he blessed him. Then Absalom said, if not, please let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said to him, why should he go with you? But Absalom urged him, so he let Amnon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, watch now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say to you, strike Amnon, then kill him. Do not be afraid, for have I not commanded you? Be courageous and valiant. So the servants of Absalom did to Amnon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and each one got on his mule and fled.
Right, so you see what happened. Thank you. We stop in there. So you see what happened coming out of this. Absalom waited 2 whole years. What do you think would have been going through his mind all that time? He would have been plotting. He would have been looking for the right time and the right moment, because his heart was filled with hatred. This is what hatred does. When you hate somebody, sometimes it gives you that patience if you want to get back at them, because you want to make sure it works. You want to make sure that what you do would be effective, that you do it at the right time. And so he waited 2 whole years, all that time harboring anger in his heart, all that time harboring resentment for his brother, for the act that he did. And all that time, his sister could not go out there and meet others, meet somebody and get married. She had to stay desolate in his house. And she had to stay that way for the rest of her life. And there Absalom plotted to kill his brother, using the father to arrange it. And we see what happened. He didn't do it directly. He didn't take up the sword and kill him, but he arranged, he put out a hit on him. Much like what happens here now. He put out a hit. He told him, when he's drunk, when he's drinking, his heart is merry. When he's drunk, kill him. And so they would have been loyal to Absalom, and they did exactly that. So Amnon died. Why did he die? Because of the act that he had committed against his sister, against his half-sister, the sister of Absalom. So you see the effects of rape. Shame, anger, hatred, plotting, conspiracy, murder. All of that because of rape. These are some of the effects of rape, and I'm sure much more. We haven't even talked about what happened to Tamar, what she would have been going through. But rape is a terrible crime, and it's difficult to forgive. Not impossible, but it's difficult to forgive. Rape is not something that is dealt with easily at all, because it has effects way long after the act itself. People live with that all their lives, and it affects them in the life that they live after that. People who get married after having been raped. And it takes years and years sometimes. And this is something that only God I know you could go to counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists, but the only person that could remove that pain and that hurt is God, the only one. And so I want to pause here for a minute. Any questions, any comments, anyone? Question, comments?
We just have a comment, one comment in the chat. A rapist could be a murderer as well.
Well, that's one of the effects of rape, you know. Sometimes it leads to murder. Sometimes to protect yourself. Look at what happened with David. I mean, he didn't rape Bathsheba, but to cover up, he ended up killing somebody. And that happens a lot of times in rape too. You want to cover up the fact that you rape somebody, especially for somebody you know, and you might end up murdering that person. It's a terrible crime. It's a horrible crime. And it's a crime that evokes strong emotions of rage. No comments, no further comments, anybody?
No, Dr. Richards, no.
Well, don't be shy on me now. Don't get shy on me at all. All right? Okay, let's read another story. Genesis chapter 34, First Lady, from verse 1.
Yes, Dr. Richards. Genesis.
Chapter 34, from verse 1.
Sure. Okay. Now, Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the daughters of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor the Hivite, prince of the country, saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her.
Here's another
His-
rape. Here is another
his-
rape. And this one is a daughter of Jacob. I know who Jacob is, right? Jacob is the grandson of Abraham. Abraham, son of Isaac. Isaac had Jacob and Esau. Jacob is the one who had to work 14 years for Rachel. He's also married to Leah. And one of Leah's daughter is the one who's raped. So go ahead.
And God also changed his name to Israel. He wrestled.
Yes.
Yes. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. And he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife."
All right, stop there a minute. So you see the difference between these two. When Amnon raped Tamar, he hated her immediately. Here's a different response, a different reaction, a different scenario. He violated her, he raped her, but he loved her. Right? He was strongly attracted to her according to the word. So go ahead.
And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved and very angry, because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife and make marriages with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters to yourselves. So you shall dwell with us and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it, and acquire possessions for yourselves in it. Then Shechem said to his father and his brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife. But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father and spoke deceitfully, because he had defiled Dinah their sister. And they said to them, we cannot do this. We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition, we will consent to you. If you will become as we are, if every male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone. And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was more honorable than all the household of his father. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of their city and spoke with the men of their city, saying, these men are at peace with us. Therefore, let them dwell in the land and trade in it. For indeed, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters to us as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the man consent to dwell with us, to be one people. If every male among us is circumcised, as they are circumcised, will not their livestock, their property, and every animal of theirs be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. And all who went out of the gate of his city heeded Hamor and Shechem his son. Every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city. Now, it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, that two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's sister, Dinah's brother, each took his sword and came boldly upon the city and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and Shechem his son with the edge of the sword, and took Dinah from Shechem's house and went out. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city, because their sister had been defiled. They took their sheep, they took their oxen and their donkeys, what was in the city and what was in the field, and all their wealth, all their little ones and their wives they took captives, and they plundered even all that was in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, you have troubled me by making me obnoxious among the inhabitants of this land, among the Canaanites and the Perizzites, and since I am few in number, they will gather themselves together against me and kill me. I shall be destroyed, my household and I. But they said, should he treat our sister like a harlot?
Okay, we'll stop there. So another interesting story. What are some of the things? Come, let's talk about what are some of the things that came out of the fact that this woman was raped, this young lady. What were the effects of the rape of this lady? I already told you that the two different scenarios or two different responses. One, he still pursued even after he slept with her. That's Shechem. He still pursued her. He still wanted to get married to her. So it seemed as though he was really deeply attracted to this young lady. But You see, being attracted to someone and desiring someone does not give you the right to sleep with them, does not give you the right to go to bed with them, doesn't give you the right to rape them. In fact, it does not even, in this day and age, it does not give you the right to have sexual relations with them, even if they consented, because that's outside of marriage. But this is a case where she didn't consent at all, and he raped her. What are some of the effects? Let's talk. What are some of the things that came out of this rape?
Minister Joshua, Dr. Richards. And before Minister Joshua speaks, someone said deception and murder. Another says all the males in the city was murdered. Minister Joshua.
Yes, Dr. Richard. I see that what came out of that was the destruction of an entire city, the murder of men, the capture of women, the destruction of everything. So it was just chaos that came out of this. Out of one man's sin, an entire city fell. An
entire city fell because one man did something that he was not supposed to do. Because one man committed that act of rape. An entire city, and not just fell in on. The men were murdered and the women were taken as captive because of one man. Do you see the effect that one person can have? Do you see? What else happened? What else do you see in the story that was related to what happened?
Hi, Dr. Richards. I have a comment. Minister Joshua, again, I have a comment. Someone says that his lust was very powerful.
His lust was very powerful.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Dr. Richards, I just wanted to say the kind of anger that came out of it as well, because this just happened because of, well, two men did all of this. Just two men destroyed an entire city. So the kind of rage and anger gives you strength and energy, as I could see.
That's right. When you're out for vengeance, you, as I said, you're patient, you plot, you do all sorts of things. And then your anger, it gives you strength. And we have to be careful with that. We've got to be very, very careful. But when we get emotional, when we experience that emotion of anger, anything can happen. But there's one other thing that happened as well. Tell me if you see it. There's something else that happened as a result of that rape. Come on, talk to me.
I have a comment in the chat, Dr. Richards. Someone said they brought distress upon their father.
Correct. Absolutely. And that's what I was looking for. They brought distress on their father because they didn't tell him what they were going to do. He would probably have stopped them, discouraged them. So they didn't tell him. They went and they did this thing and they brought distress. He said, you know, look how we are looking in the eyes of the people of the land now. They are going to kill us. They're going to overpower us and they're going to kill us. This is not what I planned, sons. This is not what I wanted. Sometimes we do think and we don't think about the effect that it will have, especially on those that we love. Because Jacob was the head of the household and he should have been told it's his daughter, even though it was their sister. It was his daughter, so they should have told her. They didn't tell him anything. And this is what they did. So you see the effects, and this is what I'm talking about tonight. The effects of rape, and not just rape, but things that we do. Sometimes we don't give it a second thought. Or sometimes in our vengeance, in our emotional state, we don't think about the fact that what we're doing is wrong. We don't think about the fact that it affects other people. We don't think about the fact that it could cause distress to those around us. We just want vengeance. And we ought to be careful, because remember last night, all of us were saying we would kill. That man dead, that man dead. But after he dies, what happens? What happens to you? What happens to your family? If you're a male, what happens to your household now? What if you're the sole breadwinner? What happens to you? What happens to as well if when you kill somebody, you start a cycle? Because somebody, and this is what is happening right now, even in our country, everybody wants to avenge everybody else. So you do something to my family, then I do something to yours, and you do something to another one of my family, and I do something to yours, and so it goes, and it creates a cycle that never ends. So we've got to be careful. And we need to think. And that is why we always have to be in the presence of God. And everything that we do must be God-directed. Everything that we do. When we are going to do something, especially we're making a decision, God, is this your will? Would this please you? Is this what you want? So we've got to be careful. So again, let me pause. Any question, comments, anybody, before we move on?
No question, Dr. Richards, and no comments thus far.
Okay. So let me just kind of bring it home to us here in Trinidad and Tobago. In TNT, both men and women are protected against the offense of rape. So it's not just women, both men or women. And a person commits rape when he has sexual intercourse with another person without the consent of that person. And he knows that the person doesn't consent to the intercourse, or he doesn't care whether or not the person consents. He has committed rape. That's according to our laws here. The second thing is that if a person agrees to have sexual intercourse with another person, but he did that under duress, he was threatened, he or she was threatened, then it amounts to rape. Or according to our law, if the person is misled about the nature of the intercourse. Now, that is one of the things that I'm not too sure about. And I don't know if any one of you could make sense of that for me. It says if the person is misled about the nature of the intercourse, it amounts to rape. So I don't know if it means, but let me not say, there's one thing that comes to mind, but anybody here, do you think you understand what that means if the person is misled about the intercourse? Anybody? About the nature of the intercourse? Nobody vent here?
Yes, Sister Nayene.
Hi, good night,
Sister
everyone.
Aye.
I am aware of situations where there are people who believe that they were having protected intercourse and the individual secretly removed the protection and they were misled about the nature of the intercourse in that context.
Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Anyone else? What I am thinking, I'm not a legal expert, but this is the law we're talking about here. What I'm thinking, apart from what Yane said, was that if you consent to having sexual intercourse with somebody, and instead of having what we call normal intercourse, maybe they end up having anal intercourse or some other type of intercourse. That's the only thing that in my mind, that you were misled as to the nature of the intercourse. But the law said that amongst the rape. Okay. Also, if you are under threat of harm to yourself or to somebody else, that is also considered rape. So you have sex with somebody because you were threatened or your family is threatened. If you don't do this, I'm going to kill your father, kill your mother, kill your child, kill your sister. That is rape. So even though you consent to it because of that, but if you did it under duress, or if the person, here it is, if the person that you have the sexual relations with is impersonating somebody else, that amounts to rape. Now, I've tried to wrap my head around that one.
We have two comments.
How is
Dr.
it that
Richards?
somebody could impersonate somebody else, all right, and have sexual intercourse with you? That is kind of, again, comment. Anybody?
Yes, Dr. Richards. We have a comment. How about assuming that is someone assuming that someone doesn't physically resist during a sexual encounter, it must mean that they were willing. How about assuming that is someone doesn't physically resist? Okay, how about assuming that is someone doesn't physically resist during a sexual encounter, it must mean they were willing. And another comment says underage.
Okay, let me just comment on that. Not resisting does not mean that you have given consent. Some people are fearful for their lives. As you said, some people are threatened. So to say, well, the person did not resist, therefore they were given consent is not so. Is not so. Isn't that what? You have to resist and get hurt and show that you got hurt and abused to be able to make a case against the person? I think that's just wrong. That is just wrong. Okay, and I know it's a challenge for a lot of people, especially if somebody that you love get raped and you realize that they didn't do anything. Did you fight him? Did you do this? And did you do that? And you make the victim, you victimize the victim because the victim did not do what you expected them to do that would make you feel better. And that should not be. Okay, now I am talking from a layman's perspective. I'm not an expert in the law. I'm not an expert, and as I told you, I would really like to get somebody to come in and talk about this, but maybe sometime later on. All right. Let me just quickly, before we end off, I want to end off this tonight. Penalty for rape in Trinidad, life in prison, and in certain circumstances. Now listen to what it says. This is the law in Trinidad. Life in prison. And in certain circumstances, a more severe penalty of imprisonment for the remainder of your natural life. So I don't understand that, unless, of course, life imprisonment doesn't really mean life imprisonment. Okay? And they impose those penalties if the rape is committed by 2 or more persons, or if it's committed against someone who's under the age of 12. It is committed in heinous circumstances, whatever that is. If it's also committed when the victim was pregnant and the person who committed the act knew that she was pregnant. And we're talking about life imprisonment. Those are the circumstances. Or if the accused was previously convicted for rape. It also says in our law books that marital rape, again, is something that is illegal, and the law recognizes rape within marriage, and it doesn't matter whether you're separated or you're going to get a divorce, it's still rape. All right, so these are some of the things. There are some other things that I wanted to share with you concerning our laws, like what is grievous sexual assault? What is the penalty for that? What is buggery? What is indecent assault? These are some of the things. But I wanted to share these things with you because I want us to understand that we live in a real world where things can happen to us and to those around us. And we need to understand what is happening and what is our response. How do we react to that? What do you do when someone that you know is raped, or if you are raped? What are some of the things that you can do? Because I'll tell you something, believers and non-believers alike get raped. Sometimes we do things that cause these things to happen, and that's another thing we would have to discuss. What are some of the things that attracts people, you know, in such a way that they would want to rape you? What are some of the things that we can do to protect ourselves? Again, I want to bring in some of the experts to talk about that. But these things are important because a believer who gets raped could affect the whole salvation. When I say affect the salvation, some people blame God and get into such depression that, you know, their walk with God is either stalled or, you know, or they turn back. So these are some, we need to talk about these things. We need to talk about Christianity and what happens and crime that happens in the world and what is our response to it. Okay, so this is all we're going to do for tonight. On Tuesday, God's willing, we're going to continue our talk about love, what love is. The first thing is that love is patient. That's what we've been talking about. Love is patient. And we looked at the fact that, you know, look at those scenarios where people were not patient in love. We're going to continue our talk on what love is. If you have any question, you know, sometimes you don't want to ask a question in the chat, please feel free to reach out to me and send you can DM me, direct message me, and or if maybe you want to share testimony, but you want to remain anonymous, maybe that's happened to you, feel free to reach out. Maybe it's something that you have not dealt with as yet. Please feel free to reach out to us. We want to take off all the grave clothes. We want to set people free. That's what Jesus Christ came to do, to set us free. And when he sets you free, you're indeed free. Okay, but some of us are not free because of the experiences that we've had. So please reach out. Reach out. Don't keep it to yourself. Reach out. God bless you. Have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful weekend. I love you
Dr.
dearly.
We have two comments, I think it is.
Sure.
One is invading the person's privacy, and another is maybe one is with the chance of parole after a certain time versus until natural death. Maybe
I didn't hear
one
that
is
so
with the
clearly. Could you read that again?
maybe one is with the chance of parole after a certain time versus until natural death.
Naturally. Oh, you mean the life imprisonment. Okay. Yes, possible. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, Dr. Richards. As I'm on the floor, I just want to remind you all that we meet this Sunday, Intercessors Behind the Veil, at Sunday at 5 p.m. And also on Monday, we come back at 6 p.m. for prayer meeting, ministry prayer meeting, and you're all invited from 6 to 7, just 1 hour. And we come back for our Bible study on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Please continue to share the videos, send the Zoom link out, like and subscribe, and just invite others. It's such a joy and a fun to study the Word of God together. We want to wish you, Dr. Richards, myself, and the boys, we want to wish you a safe weekend, a good weekend. Those of you, once again, if you're interested in volunteering for our end of year celebration, which is started for the 16th of December, from about 9 to 3, we just want to come together, fellowship, have a good time, eat lots of food, you know, just have a good time together. If you are interested in being a part of that committee, that planning committee, we want to invite you to reach out and let us know. Amen. So God bless you, each and every one of you. We thank God for you. As I said, be safe. Dr. Richards, the chicken pox, monkey pox.
Monkey pox, yes.
Yeah, you know, so please be very careful. All right. Continue to practice what do we call it, Dr. Richards? Cleanliness. Because Dr. Richards, would you like to share with us how it is spread from what you know?
No, well, it's close contact. It must be in close proximity, including sexual relations. It's not as contagious as COVID, but yet again, we don't want to get it. And, you know, somebody said, in fact, I would